Welcome into episode 20 of the PrintFest DFS podcast. My name is Justin Rue alongside Scott Bandy, and we're going to be breaking down our Draftkings lineup for week 15. And it was a nice week. I mean, the line of cash was sitting around 158 or so, 159 in most double ups. So finished nicely above line of cash. We ended up rolling the same lineup. Almost 168 points. We faded Henry, and somehow we survived. We survived a Henry fade. I'm not sure how we did it,
Thank you, Tony Pollard.
but yeah, I'm not sure how we did it. Obviously, in hindsight, the best running back pairings was probably Kamara, Pollard, and Henry, and finding a lineup through there. I fiddled with some lineups with that, and I really it took me off Ayuk. I do think that the right running backs were Henry, Kamara, and Pollard, but what it did to the rest of my lineup, it peeled me off of Ayuk and made me come down to the T.Y. Hilton range, and I was just never fading Ayuk in this spot. So we'll break down our lineup. We ended up having a 3v3 that we were debating right up until lock, and it was Tony Pollard, Cam Akers, and Travis Kelce, or Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, and Cole Kmet. And I know we talk all the time about punting off tight end, but I thought the volume for Pollard, Akers, and Kelce exceeded the volume that we were expecting from Henry, Jonathan Taylor, and Kmet. So we ended up being 7 points better on the Pollard side. So ended up being the right decision in hindsight.
Yeah, I really was terrified of fading Henry, but once the news hit that Zeke was going to be inactive, so basically for me, Cam Akers and Jonathan Taylor was essentially a wash. I thought I would rather play Taylor, but Akers, he fit in lineups a little bit easier, so I was completely fine with that. So really, what it came down to for me was, Pollard and Kelce versus Derrick Henry and Kmet. And while maybe you would give a slight edge to Henry over Kelce, Pollard versus Kmet is just, it's far and away Pollard. So I felt a lot safer going Pollard Kelce, which brought me off of Henry, which was definitely scary. And I mean, we ran a little hot with Henry because Tannehill cut to a rushing touchdown from him.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'll be sending Tony Pollard a Christmas card. This year. He outscored Henry at half the price. So, I mean, yeah, we were definitely on the right side for once. So it feels pretty good.
I don't know, and I remember I mentioned on Friday night at the end of the show that if we faded Henry, they just banged me over the head, and and we faded him again. I don't think I rarely play Henry. I don't know why. I don't know what my deal is with just not playing him. I just don't do it. God. Just feel like a total fish.
And he ended up what? He was what 50% or so.
Yeah, he was the second highest running back next to Kamara. So anyway, so starting at quarterback, we both we both play Jalen Hurts, and in my consideration for quarterbacks on the slate, it was Jalen Hurts and probably Kyler Murray, both for their dual upside. The rushing upside they have is just so nice, and Hurts ended up having 63 rushing yards and end up getting the bonus. It was a total smash. Ended up putting up 41.8 or 40.8. So, 5,900, obviously, I mean, that is a total smash at 30% owned in cash. He was the highest owned quarterback, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, he was a smasher.
Yeah, I mean, usually quarterback, I mean, you don't really get killed, but man, when he's 30%, he puts up almost 41. Like, good Lord. Like, he far exceeded all expectations. Like, we hit the bonus, 63 rushing yards, rushing touchdown, 3 touchdowns through the air. Like, good grief, man. Like, he couldn't have smashed any harder if he tried. Like, yeah, I mean, he was virtually a lock all week at this price at 5,900, and we knew it was probably going to be, a likely shootout spot, and that's what we got. And I mean, 63 rushing yards with the legs on, I think, 11 carries it was. I mean, that's pretty much what we expected carries wise.
Exactly. Yeah.
So obviously he was.
Yeah, I thought that he was the clear cash play. I did mess around with some Kyler lineups. Kyler was projecting for about 3 or so more points. But ultimately, I like the lineup that I got in there with Hurts. So I definitely feel good about the process on Hurts, and obviously the results were extraordinary. So moving to running back. So Alvin Kamara was the lock of the week, and there's just no debating that one. He was 78% owned. In higher stake stuff, he was 80 to 90% owned. I mean, the guy, once we knew Drew Brees is playing, I mean, that's the target share number one. That's going to bump up with Drew Brees instead of Taysom Hill. And then we get the Michael Thomas out, and so we can safely project Alvin Kamara for probably a 20 to 30% target share, and that's not crazy to even project that. And he ended up leading the team in targets, and he only having 6 targets, but still got there 18.4 points. I mean, it's not a total smash, but I would make that play over and over and over again at 7,400. If you didn't play Alvin Kamara and you're playing cash games on DraftKings, you're just doing it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, versus Kansas City, I mean, there's not a better spot with, especially with Breeze back. And I know that Breeze really, cracked his pants. But that's got to be like even coming off the injury with no Michael Thomas, like he completed like 40% of his passes. Like he was unbelievably bad. And we got Taysom Hill goal line touchdown that probably would have went to Kamara if not Taysom. So we probably ran a little bit cold there with both Breeze and Taysom. But he still put up 18 points. Like he still wasn't that far off value. I mean, really just 3 or 4 points away. And again, he was a lock. Like there was 3 guys that never left my lineup all week, and it was Hurts, Kamara, and Ayuk. Those were the 3 guys that were never leaving my lineup, no matter what I was doing. So yeah, if you didn't play Kamara, you should probably reevaluate your process, I guess.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So Tony Pollard was the other guy that was really strong. And once Zeke was out, we knew that there's basically no one behind him. It was Rico Dowdle and then a fullback, and neither of those guys have any NFL carries. So at 5,200, we could safely project Pollard for basically all of Zeke's role plus some, because in the last couple of weeks, Pollard's really been cutting into Zeke. And so now you're telling me that I can get Pollard, who is just as good, if not better than Zeke, and it's a better role than Zeke would be getting if Pollard was active as the backup. So basically, what you're telling me is I can get a player who's a little bit better than the starter, and now he doesn't have a backup to steal any touches from him. Yeah, I mean that was a total smasher. He was 37% owned. He ended up putting up 31 points at 5,200. Again, this is another play I would make over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, if Pollard was out and Zeke was 5,200, people would be sprinting to play Zeke.
Right.
Even I mean, it wasn't a great matchup versus the Niners, but I think Pollard's better than Zeke. So with Zeke out and Rico Dowdle behind him, who's just a trash can, like how do you fade that volume? And granted, we ran hot with that, that 40-yard touchdown at the end of the game. But man, even before that, he was smashing. Like he was smashing at the end of the first quarter. And I know it was a little bit tilting because he didn't really do much after that until the fourth. But
Yeah.
man, like at 5,200, I can't believe he was only 36% owned. Like I thought he was going to be 50+%. Like he smashed even in a bad matchup. And I hope Zeke's out again because I just like watching Tony Pollard.
Yeah, Pollard's a beast. That 40-yard touchdown run that he had there, he broke like 4 tackles on that play. That was sexy, and that was, oh my god. So yeah, Pollard, another smasher of a play. And then we finished off our running back room with Cam Akers, and so Cam Akers was, of course, at home taking on this hapless Jets defense, and we know that the Jets sell out to stop the run. We know that, but we also know that Cam Akers is a 3-down plus goal line back that we can safely project for 75 to 80% of the running back touches. And, with a 31 implied total, 17-point home favorites against the Jets, I mean, at 6,600, like we mentioned, I thought he was pretty close to Jonathan Taylor in projection. So having that slight discount of 600 under Jonathan Taylor, I thought that made Akers the better play. And Akers ended up getting hurt in this game, and so he only ended up playing overall 61% of the snaps. But in the first half, he only played like 35% of the snaps because he had a busted ankle and went to the locker room. But he came out in the second half and he played 88% of the snaps in the second half. So he is still their full bell cow. He just had to leave for injury in this game, and maybe if he didn't leave for injury, he would have totally blew up this price tag. Um, and of course, he did have a rushing touchdown that was called back to holding, and another long gain called back to holding. So yeah, I mean that kind of stuff happens. I'm not really going to worry about that too much. I thought the Akers was a good process play, and I definitely don't regret playing him at 6,600.
This was the most tilting game of the week. Like, I don't know what the Rams were doing yesterday. And I'll tell you why. It's because I bet the Rams, so of course the Jets won the game. Uh, and Akers got hurt pretty early. Thankfully, he came back. He still got the workload. He had two really. He had the touchdown got called back for a penalty, and then I think he had like a 25-yard carry that there was a legal block in the back on that play, so that came back too. So I mean, he gave us those two plays. He's over 100 yards. He's got a touchdown. It's a smash. I mean, regardless, even with 7.2 points, it didn't really hurt us that bad because of what we got from Hurts and Pollard and Ayuk and Kelsey. Like, it was still fine, even when he wasn't that owned. Yeah, him versus Jonathan Taylor, I still think they were about the same play. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor had the better matchup, but he was also more expensive and he had less of a trustworthy workload, in my opinion. Frank Reich just really rides the hot hand. Even though lately it has really been the Jonathan Taylor show, it's hard to trust. And I really thought that it's going to be all Cam Akers, and it really was again before and after he came back in the game. So, um, yeah, I mean, at 6,600, I thought he was a fine play. He didn't get there, but again, not everybody can always get there.
Yeah. Moving over to wide receiver, I think we both thought that Brandon Ayuk was just I thought he was a total lock at 6,300. We knew that coming to this game, over the last three, he had like 13 targets per game. I mean, the guy's getting totally peppered. There's no Kittle, there's no Debo. He is the alpha on this offense, and he's a rookie, and he just keeps ascending. He's been smashing. I mean, he has just been an absolute beast. And of course, and he did it again. He ended up going 9 for 73 and 1 in this spot, scoring 22.3 Draftkings points at 6,300. Smashed his salary. He was the highest owned wide receiver on the slate, and rightfully so. He was definitely the best wide receiver play by far.
6,300 against Dallas. Like, I'll say it again: X receivers versus Dallas. Play them. No Kittle, no Debo at 6,300. He was just a complete lock. It's not shocking at all that he was the highest owned receiver on the slate. 9 for 73 and got in the box. Like, that's exactly what you want. He's been uber consistent lately, man, regardless of whether Debo's played or not. Like, the last 6 weeks or so, he has just been smashing every single week. So, again, this is exactly what we expected from them.
Yeah, for sure. Just total smash. So Emmanuel Sanders, I thought was really strong with no Michael Thomas at 4,200. We could probably project him for at least a 20% target share in this spot with Drew Brees coming back and no Taysom Hill. We definitely expected some more efficiency from Sanders with Drew Brees back there, but Drew Brees has had just a dog shit game. I mean, the guy, he really struggled in his first game back. He's clearly like still hurting from smashing those ribs up and collapsing along. So, but Sanders ended up kind of getting there. I mean, he ended up going 4 for 76. Getting 11.6 points at 4,200. I mean, it's certainly not bad. He was 51% owned, so he was extremely chalky. I think he was the second highest owned wide receiver on the slate, and again, rightfully so. 4,200 for the lead wide receiver in the Saints offense in a shootout here against the Chiefs. I would play him all over again. I love the play.
Yep. When he had like that 50-yard catch in like the second quarter or something, And I thought it was just pants off. Like I thought we were just going to be windmilling.
Yeah.
Uh, and then he didn't do anything until the last drive. Ended up he had 3 receptions in the last drive, and ultimately ended up helping us out a little bit. But before that, it was just tough to watch Drew Brees, man. Like Sanders only ended up with 5 targets, which were second most on the team, but Drew Brees only completed like 15 passes yesterday. So the fact that we got 4 receptions out of Sanders, you know when you consider that, that's not that bad. So again, it was a great spot that he was the default wide receiver one, unless you want to say Kamara is the default wide receiver one.
Right.
Um, Against the Chiefs team where you knew they were going to put up 30, the Chiefs put up 30 every week. So yeah, we knew the Saints were going to be clawing to stay ahead or stay up in this game. So 4 for 76 at 4,200, can't really complain about that.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, and so in the last wide receiver spot, again, really a strong play here at 3,600, Lynn Bowden. And so Devontae Parker was out. Mike Gesicki was out. Jakeem Grant was out. I mean, he's their de facto number one, and he runs the majority of his routes out of the slot. So we know he's getting these easy dump off targets that are 5 or 6 yards downfield. So he's just got these easy layup targets, and him having 7 targets, 6 catches for 37 yards, then tacked on a carry for another 9 yards. Um, 10.6 points for 3,600 is exactly what we need. And he was kind of chalky too. And again, rightfully so. It's another play that I would make over and over again. He was basically their number one wide receiver at 3,600. I mean, that you just play him. It's just a ton of value. You just play him in cash games.
Yeah, and we got Parker, Gesicki, and Grant all inactive. That was pretty surprising. It looked like Parker and Gesicki were going to end up playing, but no, surprising inactives at 3,600. That really helped. I mean, that value really helped lock in, Kamara and Kelsey. Before that, I'm assuming everybody was on Gallup. I know I was, but I was kind of going back and forth. I was like, I don't know if I want to play Gallup and Emmanuel Sanders. But then, when the Dolphins inactives hit, it was hard to come off Bowden. Like he's just the wide receiver one at 3,600. There's just no one else to throw to. So, yeah, he was fine. 10.6 points. I mean, most of the time you don't even get that from a guy that you're spending 3,600 on. So he hit value. Beautiful, exactly what we wanted. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then at tight end, we always talk about whether to pay up for Kelsey or just punt it off. And it's either one. I'll never play a guy in the middle. And so we end up paying up for Kelsey. We had the salary in this lineup by coming down from Henry down to Pollard. It allowed us to get up to Kelsey. And, at 8K, Kelsey ended up scoring 22.8. At his salary, technically, if you want to say he got 3X, he needs 24. Yeah, he finished 1.2 behind that. So, whatever. He ended up not being that chalky. I think Cole Kmet was the highest owned tight end on the slate at around 30%. And Kelsey, I think, was the second or third highest tight end on the slate, I think behind Jared Cook. So at 19% ownership, I was actually pretty happy to get him down that low. And of course, he had a nice floor game. He ended up going 8 for 68 and 1, and he also tacked on a 2-point conversion. So, he's 7 straight games with 8 or more receptions. I mean, that is just ludicrous for a tight end. He just keeps going. And I know this wasn't a good matchup here against the Saints. They're pretty solid against tight ends. But that just doesn't really matter for someone like Travis Kelsey. Just such a nice floor, and he ended up being just fine for us.
Yeah, I mean, again, like if we want to compare Kelsey and Henry, it's easier for Kelsey to get there because every time he cuts the ball, he's going to get not only the points for the yardage, but he's going to get 1 point every single time he gets reception. So it's easier for him to have that easy floor game. And if you want to say this is his floor, like over the past 8 weeks, like this is his floor. Like
Yeah.
8 for 68 and 1. Like he's just been smashing week in, week out. And honestly, Mahomes, watching this game, the start of this game, Mahomes did not look very good at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of errant throws, and the offensive line was not holding up like at all when I was watching the game. So, Obviously, we want a little bit more in terms of receiving yardage from Kelsey, but like 22.8 points from your tight end. He's been the best tight end all year. He's been really the best wide receiver this year outside of Devontae Adams.
Right.
I mean, 8K, that's probably where he should have been priced last week. And now he's there again this week. I mean, 1,400 cheaper than Henry. They didn't have that different of games. Obviously, Henry outscored him by a little bit, but moving down from Kelsey, you're still getting that alpha. You get exposure to the best game on the slate. You get exposure to the Chiefs offense, and it helps you fit a couple more of those guys that otherwise you probably couldn't have if you wanted to jam Henry in here. So, all in all, don't regret that play at all. And I'm going to continue to consider Kelsey every single week.
Yeah. And I saw lineups where people jammed in Henry, Kelsey, and Kamara. And to me, I just did not think that was optimal because you would have had to play Emmanuel Sanders and Traquan or and Gallup instead of Ayuk or something like that. And that is just not a play I was willing to make to jam Kelsey in there. Um, especially with how strong Ayuk was of a play. So some people must have thought that Ayuk wasn't that strong, and I think they were wrong. So finishing up here at tight end, yeah. So we end up going with Washington, and so Washington, we know they have a massive um, adjusted sack rate. So like their defensive line is super strong. They get a ton of pressure on opposing passers. We know that Russell Wilson's great, but Russell Wilson also takes a lot of sacks. Um, and with the combination of Chase Young and Montez Sweat, I mean this defensive line for Washington is absolutely ferocious. They were the second highest owned defense on the slate, at home here against Seattle. They end up only scoring 3 points. I mean, they gave up 20 points. That's fine, whatever. But they didn't get any sacks, and that's one thing I just kind of didn't expect. Not getting any sacks. They did get an interception on Russ, but they kind of underperformed in this spot. But I thought they were the best point per dollar defense. We always like to punt off defense, and I thought that they were the cheapest viable defense on the slate. What do you think about Washington?
Yep. So I kept trying to jam Jonathan Taylor in this same lineup instead of Cam Akers, but it was going to force me to go down to like the Jets defense. And I was like, man, like the Jets defense are almost certainly going to give you 0, right? And I thought Washington would at least get a couple sacks. I didn't think this game was going to be high scoring either, and it wasn't. Turns out, like if I would have played Jonathan Taylor with the Jets defense, man, that would have been great. But yeah, I thought Washington was in a great spot. The mismatch with the offensive line for Seattle and the defensive line for Washington, I thought was just really something that was going to allow us to get 4 or 5 sacks on Russ potentially. But to get none, I mean, whatever. Like we say, it's 3 points from a defense. It's whatever. Like it doesn't really affect you that much unless like the chalky defense hits like 2 defensive touchdowns. Like then you're probably hurting. But outside of that, like defense is marginal week in week out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm always cool with just punting off defense, and I thought they were cheapest viable defense, and we ended up going with them. And whatever, 3 points, I don't really care. It's defense. So with that, I mean, I thought that the construction was really solid on this slate. I mean, you did get a little bit of correlation there with Kelsey and with Kamara, and then a little more correlation there between Pollard and Ayuk if that game starts to shoot out. And um, yeah, I mean, I really thought that this was a nice slate and a lot of really locked in plays, and ended up being really solid for us in a solid week. So overall, things went about the way we thought they would, and we ended up making money. So it's always good. So with that, that's going to do it for the Week 15 DraftKings breakdown. We will be back at some point next week. I know because Christmas is on Friday, so we'll be back probably Saturday if I were to guess. We'll probably get this thing up like Saturday afternoon or so. At some point there, breaking down the Week 16 DraftKings main slate, which is wild to think of. It's like it just flies right by. It's like gone. But until then, good luck, everybody.